In our last episode, we talked about the absolutism, and in this episode, we're going to talk about the American Revolution. So, let's get started. My name is Sean, and why don't we start by looking at some notes? Alright, now that we got a brief introduction about our American Revolution of this episode, let's get started on our explaining part of it. Alright, let's talk about how the American Revolution began. It began because of a war between France and Britain. The war between France and Britain was very expensive for both of them, and eventually Britain won the war. After realizing that it was very expensive, and now that they got the certain colonies of the North America, their colonies now, they decided to, the King of Britain, King George III, decided to tax the colonies. He didn't do this alone though. He did it with his government, in this case, the Parliament. King George III. What is Parliament? Parliament is originally a French word meaning to speak, and in this case, it is a political group of politics who make laws for the government, in this case, Britain. Laws for the country, in this case, Britain. King George III and Parliament worked together, and they made new taxes for the colonies. One of the taxes for the colonies is the Stamp Act, and they were very high in money. And if you guess that these certain colonies did not like the high taxes, you will be right. They didn't like the high taxes very much, so they protested against King George III and Parliament. One of these resisting and protesting was the Boston Tea Party. I was lucky enough to go to Boston myself, and I also recorded a video about it. Check it out in this channel and the other YouTube. Anyways, since that Boston, and it's called the Boston Tea Party. Surprisingly, the Boston Tea Party is not a tea party at all. Well, it does include some British teas though, but it's not a tea party. It was a few American colonists and rebels who dressed up as Native American Indians and went onto British ships. They allowed the American Indians on them. And then they dumped the tea into the ocean, and including, for an extra, they destroyed the British ships. Probably some of them disguised Americans drowned, but that was okay for the Boston people. The Parliament and King George III was terrified, and just in case, they sent some few redcoats to the colonies, just in case if there's a rebellion that is started, they could prevent it. What is a redcoat? Well, a redcoat is a soldier of the British Army. It turned out that the rebellion and resistance of the certain colonies were stronger than they thought. So more redcoats had to be sent. While this was happening, a guy named Thomas Jefferson and some American landowners and American politics joined together and wrote a document called the Declaration of Independence. If you're American, you should have known this well in a before grade. Declaration of Independence and the Boston Tea Party helped start the American Revolution. This Declaration of Independence was signed by the people, including Thomas Jefferson, who wrote the document, and then this was sent to King George III across the Atlantic all the way to England. I'm not even kidding, guys. The king read this document and then, well, he kind of got mad because this says that the American colonies of Britain are fighting for their freedom against the British Empire, and they won't stop until they get the freedom. In my travels in America, the real America today, I found this quote saying, "Freedom is not free." It's not like you can use money to buy freedom. Well, this, I'm surprised. Alright, after the American Revolution started, there was a lot of wars going on. And now it was Britain versus the 13th colony. The British Empire, as I said, the British Empire Army, as I said earlier, are redcoats. What are the American armies? Well, they are the Patriots. Speaking of Patriots, I'm thinking of starting a Patreon page, but more on that at the end of the video. While the Patriots were fighting, they made a flag called the Old Glory. It's like the modern day American flag, but only with that blue blocks changed it with 13 stars in a row order. But we'll more on that later. And then it slowly evolved into other American flags in history, and then to our modern day flag. One of the other flags is the Betsy Ross flag. But more on that later. Alright, so they made the Old Glory flag and they went out to battles and doing that. Well, who was their general anyways? Well, the general was the first president of the United States. They're not president yet. George Washington. Washington. George Washington became the general of the Patriots, and he even got featured in a painting. Oh, and also, he was a brilliant commander, I have to say myself. George Washington lost a lot of battles from the experienced redcoats, though, but he won the most famous battles in American history that led the Patriots to become strengthening and was able to have the courage and spirit to fight the redcoats. Yay, Patriots! Right. So eventually the Patriots won, and this is how they won. George Washington and the American rebels had no chance of winning by themselves. But since they had an advantage over Britain, though, Britain had many enemies, and one of them was France. So they allied with the French people, and then they were getting a stronger force, the French. Oh, I'm running out of space here. Well, as they allied with the French, they got even stronger, as I said earlier, and then they were able to defeat the redcoats eventually. And that is in a place called Yorktown. This blue dot represents Yorktown. I hope you can see it better. Alright, Yorktown, not like the New York you see today, is a place in Virginia. After the redcoats got siege in Yorktown, they surrendered and they were forced to sign the Treaty of Paris. So where can I see? Oh, yes. Treaty of Paris. They signed it in Paris. And then, after this, the American Revolution was over. Finally! After the American Revolution was over, people of the United States of America changed it into a democracy. A democracy. A democracy is a kind of government that lets the citizens of the country elect their leaders. In this case, the President of the United States of America. And George Washington was asked and elected to become the first president of the United States ever, and he accepted. But he only used for the term for only his first term 4 years. He just wanted to retire. Even today, we call the United States a democracy. The French was experiencing the American Revolution, and this inspired them to make their own revolution, which we'll learn in our next unit and next episode, the French Revolution. And they are gonna abandon and oppose their absolute monarch, probably the great-grandson of Louis XIV, Louis XVI. See you then. Shanhan, out. Done. Yeah. Alright, if you're wondering what these flags are the original American flags of the certain colonies of America. This is the Old Glory flag, the very first one, and this is the Betsy Ross flag, the next type. Alright, these American Revolution American flags have 13 stars each and 13 stripes each, including the red and the whites. These 13 stripes and stars represent the 13 states and colonies of the very first America. Alright, speaking of the American Revolution, it's writing time. Yeah. Alright, today's question is, what did you learn about the American Revolution and why do you think people rebel against their own government? Put your answers in the comments below or just email me in my email. Alright, let's get started. What did you learn about the American Revolution? I learned that the American Revolution is a war between Britain and the 13 colonies. America, the United States of America. It is British redcoats versus American patriots. Oh, and also the British king was King George III that time, and his government was the British Parliament. I was lucky enough to go to the U.S. capital, the United States government, still running today. Eventually, the Americans allied with the French, and they won. The French was inspired by the American Revolution. They should have been there and started their French Revolution, which will oppose probably the great-grandson of Louis XIV, Louis XVI, Monsieur, or Madam. Right, that's the answer for this question. Why do you think people rebel against their own government? Well, I think that people rebel against their own government because of fairness. Everybody should be fair. It's like black people were unfree. Here's an example. Black people were unfree back then, so they protested against the white government for the blacks and the whites to be free. And Abraham Lincoln established the 13th Amendment for slavery abolishment, and black people cheered for that. Alright. Abraham Lincoln was the guy who really abolished slavery. And also, I think people rebelled. Another reason I think rebelled for the government, not just fairness, just for equality. That's fairness, but in another meaning. Equality is a meaning that everybody should be equal, no matter what race, what color, what sex they are. Every human should be equal. I have to agree with that, though. Even if you're children or parent. Well, I'm sorry for parents who are watching this. So that's it for our writing for today, and please don't dislike this video because of that. Well, I'll see you in my extra history. Shanhan, out. Alright, today we're going to talk about extra history, the Christopher Columbus, and what happened after he discovered the Americas. If you missed our episode 3 in our season 3 of this series, I'll put the link in the description below, and you can just go check it out and come back to this video. Alright, you just watched it? Alright, come back. Alright, after Columbus discovered the Americas and discovered that he didn't find India, he told the Queen and King of Spain about his findings. He found a lot of unusual stuff. So he found tobacco, smoking pipes. So he shouldn't have brought that back. He also brought back turkeys and also a hammock. The king and queen were surprised by these discoveries, and then people started to call North America the land of opportunity. Land of opportunity. It is said that it is called the land of opportunity because it is a land of enormous wealth and resources. When tobacco was first found, it was hard to smoke it, but then they gradually got their lungs expanded. So the land of opportunity was very special to the people in Europe, and the settlers began to settle there. So, as they settled there, people who settled there make new colonies, and they sometimes fought together to get control of the colonies that the other settlers made. The greatest conqueror in North America, I have to state for myself, is Britain, who made the 13 colonies, which will expand to the 50 states of North America. After Britain conquered a lot of the French territory, the 13 colonies were not gonna be happy about this. They made a kind of rebellion between the British, and they also gave him a letter, and then gave King George III. Here's just a joke. They gave King George III the letter that this is true stuff, and well, this is the joke. When the King George III replied back, and he said, "I'm gonna kick your ass," and then he told a messenger to send it to the 13 colonies. The messenger said, "Your Majesty, your handwriting is terrible." And then the king just said, "Oh yeah, just do it." The letter got to the 13 colonies. Now this is the funniest part. Thomas Jefferson and another guy looked at the message and read, "I will lick your..." And then they looked at each other and said, "Gross." Oh, I wish I had an animation team. Alright, so that's just a joke. And after that really joke happened, and there were a lot of other things that happened to other people. Well, back to the important stuff. After the land of opportunity, North America got a lot of colonies. The certain colonies decided to attack the land of opportunity again. And then later, after the American Revolution, let's talk about after the American Revolution now. The United States got into a war that is gonna be against Napoleon. The Napoleonic Wars really started after that, and then Napoleon sold Thomas Jefferson, the third president of the United States right now, the half of the original empires. It was then this. For now story, and then it's slowly expanded to if the map was a bit larger, come here please, come here, it would have been to here for now. And then he sent Thomas Jefferson sent Lewis and Clark to explore the whole territory, and they didn't just expand to the territory that they were meant to, they expanded all the way to the other side of the Atlantic Ocean. And then they went back and told Thomas Jefferson from it, and he bought the land again. And then America became, well, I have to say that it became the strongest country and the strongest and the highest GDP in the world. It's rich. Although it's not the biggest country in the world, Russia is, but still it's most famous, I have to say. I've been to America myself once, and I've been to New York, the Art and Space Museum, the Lincoln Memorial, and I made videos for that in my YouTube channel. Check those out in my YouTube channel. Back to our land of opportunity. after the Louisiana Purchase and the purchase of the rest of modern day America, there was a lot of things that happened, and America went to modern American flag with the 50 stars to represent the 50 states of America. It still was on 13 stripes though. Well, see you in my next episode, and I'll see you then. Shinhan out. This video was made by me. It was sponsored by me. The talking was by me. These writing and also the previous writing you have seen in my video, and this drawing of these flags and the writing of the titles are done by me. This map and all the days is done by me. Also, this note that I showed you in the earlier part of the video, in the beginning, exactly. This note was written and the map and here is drawn by me. Also, this world map. And also to keep my YouTube channel 100 alive, I'm just gonna make videos for probably till the rest of my life. Oh, and speaking of YouTube channels, I'm thinking of starting a new YouTube channel. I'm not sure what I'm gonna call it, but still, I'm gonna make it. And speaking of Patriots, I already said earlier in the video, I'm still thinking of making a Patreon page. If I do make one, I'll put the link in the description. If I do make the YouTube channel, I'll put the link in the description below. And speaking of people, my editor is my mom, Anna Han. For now, you can support my channel by subscribing to my channel. If you're new, hit the bell button to also you don't miss any of my videos. And also like this video if you like this video. And consider sharing this video if you also like that video. And I'm trying to get 1 million or just a few 50,000 subscribers. That's too much, I guess, but still. Well, see you next time. And if I do ask you a question, please enter them in the comments below or just email me at my email 20jur@naver.com 20jur@naver.com. And speaking of questions, today's question is, what is North America also called to the European settlers? Is it A, North America, B, land of doom, or C, land of opportunity? See you then. Shinhan out. Robot dance, dun 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 dun.